I want to start the recording. Okay, start the recording. Open it up. Everybody's muted. All right, so let's open it up. Here we go. Watch all the participants come in. Here we go. That number is going to climb rapidly. Once they settle, what I will do is I will open it up, as is my ritual, and then we'll go and we'll have ourselves a whole evening and it'll be wonderful. Thank you all for coming in and participating. I mean, you can see that. I mean, look at this thing. Holy cow, you know? All right. Once it settles, if I see it sit there for a little bit. All right. I think we can launch. Give myself a little pause here. And who? All right, that's Bruce, okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Dana White, and this is a bit of an unusual myth salon for us. We decided at the end of the year that we really wanted to have a sense of community. That community was what drove the Myth Salon from an idea into a concept, into an event that started 4 years ago in my home. And this year, because of the coronavirus, we were driven online. Now, as sad as that is, what it has done is it has enlivened the entire community. And over the course of the year, we've done 21 myth salons. We've done talks with Dennis Slattery, with Lionel Corbett. We did an event with Christopher Vogler. We did the David Bohm event. And it's been an exciting year online. And I'm just amazed at how the community has responded to who we are and what we're doing. But I don't want to lose track in talking about what we're doing as much as the people who won't be around in the future to enjoy the lives that they had grown accustomed to. We've lost 318,000 people this year to the coronavirus. And it is sad beyond belief. The last few days have been we've lost the most people, 3,500, 3,600, I think, yesterday. And each one of these people is somebody's mother, father, neighbor, friend. I mean, it's just sad. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is open up with a moment of silence for anyone and everyone who has experienced the coronavirus this year. I want to share with you one of the real blessings that has come for me this year, which is the meeting of my now very good friend, Jonathan Staggers. The moment I heard Jonathan's voice, I heard a calling. And it's been a while since I've had a real calling. And this calling was to produce the Tao Te Ching. And I asked him whether he would narrate these for me. And he jumped at it. And so for the last month, we have been meeting up, interpreting the 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching. We are now up to 29. If I thought I could get away with it, last night, I want to tell you, he gave me a nuanced reading of number 29, which is now online on YouTube. And I made a special note online. The entire reading was one take. I didn't edit it. I didn't shorten it. I didn't add spaces in between it. I didn't do multiple takes on it. I've never experienced anybody who could enter the Tao the way Jonathan has done with his voice and to give it back to the community. And I would like to play one of the Tao Te Ching readings now and share my screen with you. This is number 25. Excuse me. Come on. Where is it? Oh.
Dana, you may be sharing the screen. Looks like you're sharing the screen.
25.
Hey, can you hear me?
In the beginning,
You're hearing sound, aren't you?
before heaven,
Hey, we're hearing the
and
sound.
You're sharing your screen.
there was great mystery
You're sharing a Photoshop document.
seeding its own uncertainty.
Okay, hang on. Thank you for catching that.
Of course, I've yeah.
Let me stop it. Let me go back because I do want to share this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's really thematically connected to winter solstice.
Let me stop to share.
"25. In the beginning, before heaven and earth, there was great mystery, seeding its own uncertainty, underwriting everything prior to anything becoming, being before evolving into its own being, beyond character, beyond form, beyond the 10,000 things. The eternal mother is the source of everything, unmoving, unified, and unchanging. It is the dark silence of the infinite void, that which is both nameless and beyond names. How can we describe it? Needing a way to talk about it and lacking a way. Some call it the Tao. Yet, Even the Tao, with its infinite capacity, cannot name the nameless. And so it must be. The way that is not the way. The Tao is all that which is, inside all forms and beyond the beyond. The center of the still point around which all existence turns, towards which everything that is destined to return. The Tao makes the cosmos infinite beyond any concept. The Tao makes heaven whole, a reflection beyond description. The Tao makes earth eternal beyond any measure of time. It enables humanity to appreciate the Tao by revealing itself as the endless source of a mystery to be trusted, transcending all the capacities of the human mind. People listen to the chatter of the 10,000 things to uncover ways to recognize the path that is no path, found beyond the names and the forms that point to the nameless and the formless. The Tao is everywhere and nowhere, empty with infinite potential and lacking nothing, unchanging yet eternally becoming itself through the evolving manifestations of the 10,000 things. And so it is, as it is, always has been, and always will be. Everything follows the Tao, and the Tao follows itself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm touched every time I see one of them again. With that, I would like to go to my good friend and colleague, Dr. Will Linn, and then we'll go back and forth and we'll make an evening of it. But thank you for indulging that. I just wanted to share it with you because it's become a very special, very, very special project in my life that the birth of it will probably take us 2 or 3 more months to wrap these things up. And then who knows what we do with them. I would love to see the interpretations become something, but they've done their work. They're doing their work, and they are transforming both Jonathan and me in the process of doing it. And so I'm just grateful to the Tao for allowing its voice to be part of existence. Thank you. Will?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dana, and Jonathan. I think actually the Tao, it kind of makes a lot of sense to look at the Tao around Christmas and around the winter solstice for a couple thematic reasons. One, that particular chapter put to major emphasis on the namelessness of the Tao, on the paradoxical duality of the Tao, on the formlessness of the Tao. And I think, when we look at Christmas, obviously we're looking at other winter solstice holidays. We look at how Christmas is almost served as a lattice for every other solstice holiday to start to be added to it in our global cultural celebrations. And when you look at the local Native American relationship with the winter solstice of the Chumash, local to Southern California and especially the Santa Barbara area, the Chumash, this is the scariest day of the year. And this day of the year, this is when the day in the winter solstice, which is just ahead of us, goes from getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and darker and darker and darker and deader and deader and colder and colder. And why would it ever turn around? And until you understand that we're in a heliocentric solar system, there's no reason for it to ever turn around. And it seems like magic. And so the winter solstice is such an integral day of the year for so many religious traditions, in part because this is the day where that magic thing happens, where the darkening changes directions and we go into the lightening again. We bring back light, life, warmth, daytime, and all these types of things, right? Well, at the nadir of darkness is the most dangerous moment of all times, is the most formless moment of all times, is the darkest of nights, is the new moon, is the winter solstice, is midnight, is this dark moment. And for the Chumash, this is when the shaman goes into the cave and dances a special dance, as there's, just like Indiana Jones, there's this like hole, this ocular hole, oculus, where light comes through just at the winter solstice and lights up the back of the cave or lights up the shaman. And this dance is done while mythically what's happening is Slo'u and Coyote are playing a game of dice. And Slo'u is the eagle. And if one wins, if Slo'u wins, it'll be like a Groundhog's Day. It'll be a bad year. And if Coyote wins, it'll be a good year, and you won't have to, sacrifice and kill these people. But this is a game of dice. Dice is a chance where anything can happen. God doesn't play dice with the universe, right? Well, the Chumash deities do on the winter solstice. And this is, I think, why the Tao is so interesting to engage around the winter solstice, in the engagement, especially with its namelessness, with its formlessness, with its paradoxical duality, because I think that is associated with the nadir, any nadir, especially the nadir of the year, which is the winter solstice. And I think it's important for us in 2020 to think about this long narrative pattern as well, because I think that many of us are noting that we're in a sort of maybe a cultural death, maybe a cultural resurrection of some kind, hopefully an inflection point, perhaps. Maybe there's a reason why fluidity is thematic right now. Maybe there's a reason why. So I think that we should be thinking about 2020 and the winter solstice, how this whole year has been an inflection point, especially when we get to the inflection point of this year. And this is an inflection point that's defined by a moment of formlessness, which is a moment of choice. An opportunity to choose how you want the new year to be, what direction we want things to go. So thank you for sharing that on the Tao, Dana. I think it's very thematic to this year, very thematic to the conversation of Christmas and any winter solstice holiday, and also definitely an expression of the type of community production and conversation that is defined what we've been doing for the last year. So I also want to take the chance to thank you, and to thank everyone who's contributed to the Salon, all the panelists, all the guests, and also people that gave specific talks, and like Dennis and Lionel, or set up the full Pulling Focus event, like Corinne, or helped us put together a whole set of panelists like Connie Zweig. And Gard was made the whole other project work with Lionel as well. So thank you to everyone that has come in and contributed, and thank you to people that send us your notes that tell us what this means to you. And that's really why we wanted to do this particular event, because the reflections the emails we get are more about the community and more about the experience and what it means than it is about some great insight that came. And I know that comes too, but those aren't the emails that we get. And that's very meaningful to me, and has been in this year. And I won't be with very much family, and I think many of us won't. So it's nice to be with everyone for Christmas. And I hope that we will get together and party when we can in real life, when that's a real thing. And hopefully 2021 is the year for that. But other than that, Dana, I think I've shared a little bit of my Christmas mythology with the Chumash and some of my reflections on the year. And I mostly just want to hear from everybody else tonight. And I know you have a little bit of a plan to make sure we get around the fairy circles. So yeah, please. Yeah, let's would love to hear from more people.
Wonderful. I would like people to get to know my good friend and colleague, Gard Jameson, a little better. And I'm so thrilled that Gard would spend a few moments with us tonight. As you may know, Gard and I have collaborated on a half a dozen different books. Some of them have gone into second printings. And he is just the most gracious person that I could ever hope to collaborate with. Maybe I attract gracious people because I say that about everybody. I say that about you, Will. I say that about Jonathan. I'm saying that about Gard. I say that about Dara and Catherine. So I don't know, maybe there's something going on here. So let me turn it over to Gard and let's hear from you, Gard, and happy holidays. And thank you, brother.
Well, Dana, thank you. In the Jewish tradition, there is a wonderful figure by the name of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov was one who created community through spirit. And I want to suggest in some fashion, you are our modern representation of the Baal Shem Tov. You have brought so many of us together in such an intimate and wondrous way. And, your project with Jonathan, to quote the famous Jungian psychologist, Stephen Colbert, tip of the hat and wag of the tail to you. That was just absolutely stunning, your representation of the Tao. And I have the privilege of teaching Chinese philosophy at the University of Nevada. And I will tell you, it's in my course, and I look forward to sharing it with many other professors of Asian philosophy. So having said all that, and again, Dana, I think maybe we can all wave our hands to say thank you to Dana for what you do and how you do it. You are, Jung said, the oldest form of medicine is enchantment, and you bring enchantment to our community. So thank you for that. So I want to just share for a moment related to what you just shared on the Tao. My greatest takeaway this year has even amplified more. So if I'm able to share screen for just a moment, Dana, to maybe get the conversation started.
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Okay, so all of us, I think, most of us had the joy of being associated with this incredible institution, Pacifica. And I had the privilege in the early 70s of having Joseph Campbell as a teacher at the University of San Francisco. And I think many of you recall that he used to say, this is the image of the new myth. This is the symbol for the new myth, planet. And as you can all see, this is Earthrise. And I really took that bait and ran with it until I met another gentleman on the journey. His name was Thomas Berry. And he said, the earth alone is not sufficient. It must be the universe story that envelops us. And for me, the new myth increasingly has become these 3 points of light: unity, diversity, and individuation. We've all heard these words so many times that perhaps we're a little jaded. But I think as a result of the coronavirus, we've all come to appreciate what Lao Tzu appreciated. And I call him the prophet of the current moment because I think his words ring so true and poetically true, that there is this underlying unity, that we are all bonded together, as Joni Mitchell says, by the dust of the universe. and that anything that works against that unity, anything that works against diversity, works against the very universe itself. So I have a transgender daughter. I have another daughter who is gender fluid. And I have seen how smallness works against diversity, how smallness doesn't affirm and confirm unity. And what Thomas Berry taught me was that only out of those two principles, unity being the principle of depth, depth psychology, contemplative depth, only out of the principle of diversity, the horizontal dimension of our existence, the relationship that we have here in this community, thanks to you, Dana, out of those two pieces comes a golden coin, which enables what the universe intended from the very beginning, for each of us to become exactly who we were intended to become. And that is, I think, for me at least, the great challenge of this moment as we begin to turn the corner on this virus, is to imagine our new myth, our universe story, the recognition that we are a unity, as Lao Tzu suggests, within this immense and splendorous, enchanted, glorious diversity. And that what we as a community, as members of this community, are here to do while on this short moment on this planet. I'm an amateur paleontologist. I like fossils. I tell Dana because why? I'm becoming one, right? Dennis, we're getting to that age. And so we're here to help each other become our very best selves. And that's what the universe is crying out for. And that's what each of us is challenged to do. And so Thomas says, the natural world is the larger sacred community to which we belong. To be alienated from this community is to become destitute in all that makes us human. To damage this community is to diminish our very existence. So the reference point, Thomas suggests, is the universe itself, not just the earth, but the universe itself. And when we move into that great work, we recognize that we are moving into an axial moment. Just as the period from 800 BCE to 200 AD was an axial moment on the planet where religion was given birth, we are moving into a moment that Wayne Teasdale would suggest, the moment of interspirituality, the moment of unity and diversity, the moment in which humans are allowed to become a mutually beneficial influence on the planet. This to me is what brings me joy every morning, and recognizing that indeed we are a communion of subjects and not a collection of objects, that our greatest objectivity comes from our greatest subjectivity. And when we dive into the depth of that unity, each of us in our own journey, we discover the glory of the diversity that surrounds us. So I thank you for this moment to share. And Dana, it has been a privilege to be on this journey with you. Again, that great Taoist sage, Stephen Colbert, tip of the hat, wag of the tail to you, my friend. You are the Baal Shem Tov of this community, and I thank you for that. So I bow to each of you, and I'm humbled by each of your presence.
Oh, Gard, thank you so much. I love you, man.
I love you.
What you bring into my life is just joy and substance. I'd like to bring in Dara, who, another of my classmates, 20 some odd years ago, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of us here tonight, that after all that time, it's just, it's really a testament. And were my good friend David Huff not having his hip replaced on Monday, he would have been here today with us. And so my thoughts are with him as he readies for his operation. But Dara, I mean, you are a gem. You tell us what story is, where story goes, where the arc of it is, to throw a pun at you that you can probably run with. So welcome. Happy holidays and love to you and Randy and Justin.
Thank you. Yeah, I just need to add my kudos to you. Really are the glue that are pulling and keeping us all together, Dana. And I share in the gratitude we all have for your work, and your work with the Tao is just phenomenal. I hope all of you are, and tell all your friends to sign up for Dana's YouTube channel. This is on, because it's phenomenal. It's so inspirational.
Thank you. But I really can't, this can't be a love Dana thing. This has got to rain on Will. Dara, it was you who introduced me to Will.
You're just getting what you deserve, Dana. So I can't help it.
But you know, it was 4 years ago when I shared the story about my wife's book club, and you said, why don't you talk to Will Linn and start something like this? So the seed to do this came from you, Dara. And I went down there and I did a song and a dance, and I said, if I do this, would you do this? And he said yes. So well, wherever this goes, Will Linn is right there with me.
Yeah, but the different, yes, and yes, thank you, Will. You guys are a wonderful, wonderful match. But I was going to say, the difference is I thought it, you did it. So congratulations to that. I had a terrible feeling you were going to pick me next, because from the sublime Gard, it was so beautiful. Everything you said, your words always touch me so deeply. And put a little plug in, if you haven't seen the books that Gard and Dana have produced, they're also phenomenal. Anyway, so I called Dana last night and I said, Dana, what are we supposed to talk about? And he said, anything you feel. So I've been feeling really crappy all day. So that's where I'm starting. But I figure if I'm here at the beginning of the line, so it's all up from here. So that'll be a good thing. I don't generally feel crappy, but today, I also appreciated what Will said about the darkness, because I've been truly brooding a lot today. And I've been trying, often when you get when a mood gets this intense, you really, give it a think and try and figure out what's going on. So I have no idea. I've been giving it a think, but I'm sure by the end of tonight, I will have fully come out of it with all of your wonderful wisdom that we're engaged in. So, so I thought I would follow up and just talk about a few things that are going on, because I think they all tie together. And I think this is a big part of why I've been brooding. I actually started to have some very good news this morning. My daughter-in-law and my son are both essential workers. My daughter is a NICU nurse, and my son works in law enforcement, and they're both on the verge of getting their injections. In fact, my daughter-in-law is getting hers tomorrow morning. So that makes me really happy. They live around the corner from us, and we've hardly been able to see them at all. So that's quite wonderful. And then I had terrible news that two very close relatives who are both in their 90s, both were just diagnosed as positive for COVID. And so I'm very, very upset and concerned about that. And it's just, we're so close to the finish line. And it's just really, really scary times. But this is what everyone is going through and feeling, and it's very, very difficult. And some of the other things I'm going through, probably a lot of us feel. We were speaking briefly before we initiated this, and talking about how it's becoming a little too cozy to be as isolated, and getting some some time to work. And I put this week aside in particular to really dive in and get some good writing done. And all I've got so far is blah, 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 blah. It's just not coming along well. So that's been very, very irritating too. So, I was thinking about, how we deal with and we process this. And, for me, because my background is story and is narrative, it's always inescapable for me to sort of wrap this around into where we are in our story, and what is what is really happening for us. And one of the biggest blessings and biggest curses that I and I think many of us got from Pacifica was the sense constant of both and. It's totally destroyed my life. And it's always this and it's that, and you can hold two sides of the story at once, and so this, the times we're living in are so difficult, and so much feels fractured, and it feels things are coming apart at the seams, and how will we ever unify, and all of this. And if you look at the arc of story, and all of history is a story, and we are part of that history as we're moving along here, that transformation is always messy business. There's no evidence to the contrary. Transformation is not just a new thought you can have and then wham bam, you're done. It is a coming apart, and it is a descent, and it is a remaking and a rebuilding, and it's coming at us so fast and furious right now. It feels as if we are really in the vortex of something is extremely powerful. So we get caught, I think, on both sides of that, that in the day-to-day world, which we have to honor, things are really horrible sometimes, just almost incomprehensible that how many people in America and around the world have died and are suffering, and will carry that suffering through their life from this pandemic, and how hateful and hurtful so much of our politics are, and all of that. And it's really inescapable. And yet, at the same time, as I said, what does transformation look like? But this pulling apart, and this reconsidering and recommuning with something that very powerful, that is pulling us forward and into a new age. So that's sort of what I've been thinking and feeling. And a lot of times in the both and, I'm on the more positive side of seeing the new world evolve. Today I'm on the yuckier side of it, but I just thought that I would bring that into the conversation, so that we don't just honor the sublime, we can honor the yuck a little bit too. Thank you all, and I wish you all very happy and healthy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Dara. Thank you. Summer before last, or maybe it was 2 summers ago, I was privileged to take a certification class about Jung. And I'm always the non-psychologist in these groups. And I always have to give a big apology to those who are kind of the legitimate scholars in the group. But I did meet 2 of the people who have become very good friends and have supported the Myth Salon as a result of doing that class. And like a lot of things, I'm always getting somebody to come out there and paint the fence with me. And one of them is Sophie. And Sophie just has this infectious I think you're Canadian, aren't you? Canadian, Sophie? Yeah, she's Canadian. And what a fresh personality. Now, I won't say Voris is not fresh, but you know, he is not Canadian. But I did meet both of them in that Jung certification class. So let's welcome in Sophie. And she has already done a Myth Salon, and I just thought she would be great for talking with us a little bit today. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Dana. And thank you for always welcoming me to the Myth Salon. I really feel grateful and honored to be able to participate. And it's kind of like a lifeblood for me. Like I get as much myth as I can get because I don't get it any other way. So thank you so much to you and Will to always have taken me into this group. So I guess what I want to talk about tonight kind of goes into the same line of what everybody said today. Like Dara just said, she talked about fragmentation and we have the sublime. And I think that's a basic principle in alchemy, that you take things apart and it's part of the transformation. You take things apart and you bring them together. And then, so part of I think that a response to traumas, a lot of time what we do is we turn to something that is larger than oneself, that is a way to heal. And it was something that the Stoic did. They took this exercise called the view from above, and then they would look at the big picture. And this is kind of where I'm coming tonight, where I wanted to share something. I've been working on a deck of oracle cards, which started a series of drawings. And in the process, though I've started this without any preconceived notion of the unconscious, like I came from, my field of study is mathematics and engineering, and I would build models of mathematics. So that's where I'm coming from. But I find that the mathematics is another way to, it's like the abstract, and then wanting to do something more visual. It took me a long time to understand that what I was really looking for was the mythic imagination. So how do you put those things together? So in my journey, I started to wanted to draw something that I would see in another person. And then it came out as, I'm going to draw this something abstract that I cannot put into words with symbols. So it became a drawing. And so from one to another, it was not it started as a personal thing, but it really became universal. Like as it started, I would tell people, hey, I'm doing this. And everybody would give me suggestions, read this book, watch this. And so one of this book that someone told me about in the beginning, I only had 2 drawings, but it's on my iPad, so I'll just show it. It's No Boundary by Ken Wilber. And that book was just, for me, it was like, having no notion of the unconscious, that was like a big revelation. Like I looked at the date, like I think it was published in the late 70s. And my first thought was like, what, how come we're still barbarian? It's like, he seems to spell it out, to spell the whole secret of the universe out in just a first chapter. And so I wanted to share my screen. I'm going to show you this table that he's got. Probably most of you know this book already, but let me see, how do I share this? Okay, so right in the first chapter, he goes and shared this table where he organized all of the Eastern and Western approach to personal growth in different levels of consciousness. So you have the persona, shadow, the ego level, bring the ego together, and then bring the ego together with the body, and then the body with everything else around the other people and the whole world, and then down to the unity consciousness. And so I put that aside. Fast forward a few years, then I ran into Dana's group, and we take the young program, and we were doing alchemy. And Dana said, I have much better images for the splendor, so please let me email them to you. So he sent me these images, and I had never seen the whole thing, like the 22 images together. And I didn't know there were 4 series, so I was curious, like, why would you do this same process 4 times over? Like, why 4? And last summer, I was kind of looking up the No Boundary book again and studying the Splendor Stories. So I was like, why don't we can we put these 2 things together? And so if you look at the 4 series, like the first series, if you can look at it as, so this is the first series takes the persona on the persona level, and then you go down. The second series is about merging with the body, and then the third series, the total organism and universe, and then the bottom is like when you reach the Philosopher's Stone, is the whole unity. So taking it one other step, like how can I bring with this motif of 4 and this archetype of wholeness together? Jung did the same thing. He has the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. Can you link that with the shadows? So this is something that thought, well, gives me a new way to look at not just alchemy, but my interest with the Splendor Solis and alchemy is also that I looked at every one of the images from the Splendor Solis and connected them to my own images that I've developed. And there's a really remarkable correspondence between the alchemical transformation and what I've come up with. Totally without no idea of the bigger picture. I'm just going one by one in the most truthful way that I can possibly, that I could possibly do. And so I've expressed myself so much better in images than with words. So pardon me if I'm not that eloquent, but this to me is like the picture of kind of, if we look at the picture of what we're going through, I thought I would just take some of these and focus on some of these to describe a little bit of what we've been through. So from like the sublime going to what Dara was talking about, sort of the difficult aspect of the journey we're going through. So some of it is like on the topo level. If you put them in perspective, we have the isolation here that we're going through, and then, but also in counterpart, the community of the help. So that alchemically, this step is to the separation of the 2 basic opposites, and then their subsequent recombination. So now we have divided ourselves apart, and maybe in 2021, we will recombine ourselves in a new community or a new way of being. Transformation with the swan. On the second level of body, you have that the relationship of the ego with the body and who's boss in some way. We have a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of questioning of authority, and we have to submit to the body. This is something that the ego is not used to. If we go further down, this pair of the house on the wheels and the house on the wheel. I just finished right before the pandemic hit. I spent a lot of time reflecting. They're very simple images, but when you go dive into it, I thought about it for like 3-4 months before. And some of the stuff, I mean, it's like the struggle we're going with like not being able to travel, not being able to move, having to stay in place. You kind of have to, by not moving, you have to go within, and you also have to think and get the bigger picture. You go from the little self, you find a transcendent self. Somebody talked about hope. I think Will was talking about hope earlier. I think that the equivalent in the tarot we have is just like on the left side, you have the adventurer, you have the energy of the tower, which is like the accident, the sudden venture we're going into, and then we're finding our balance back with the subconscious, the greater. We're connecting with the greater history. There are other generations who've gone through pandemics before, so that's reassuring. You know that they've gone through it and they've come out of it, and the world has went on after that. So this is something to be hopeful about. And on the deepest level of the unity, I think the suffering is obvious. We're all going through that. So we have on one hand the suffering, but you don't have the suffering without the strength to deal with it. So that comes together. Just briefly, like I know Will mentioned the Baobab earlier today. The Baobab is a fantastic tree. This was something I just read about. It's a prehistoric species which predates both mankind and the splitting of the continent over 200 million years ago. So how's that for a symbol of the self or the unity consciousness? The Baobab I think it can hold up to, listen, at 1,189 gallons of water. It's called the tree. It's become known as the tree of life. So I thought that was a really nice tidbit of symbolism. Also, the lion is something I've learned. I didn't know when I did the drawing, but I took a great class from the PRS, the Philosophical Center research. Is a class on esoteric symbolism, and I learned that the lion is actually a symbol for an enlightened being. And the bird is often a symbolized of the goddess. So in the tarot, you have, so like this bird over the lion is a little bit like the maiden and the strength card, like, and the lion, being able to, the communication between the energy of the goddess and the enlightened being, the lion. So now I'm gonna just end it here. Just wanted to share these thoughts with you tonight, and thank you. And happy holidays to everybody. And thank you again for having me.
Hey, Voris, my brother, you want to say something? Feel like coming in?
Sure, be glad to.
Good time?
It's a great time, thanks.
Oh, wonderful.
Before I get started, I just wanted to say how grateful I am for this group, and how grateful I am for Dana. Although he deflects the flex, that's his problem, not mine. Without Dana, I was going to say that in terms of this group, I've gained wisdom, my soul has deepened, and I'm also more enlightened and more troubled. And that I couldn't ask for more than that. But this wouldn't have occurred without Will, and I would never met Will if I had not met Dana. So I'm very, 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 very grateful. The interactions I've had has made me not only a deeper person, but in terms of my academic work, made me much more troublesome, which is always a good thing. And so I want to begin there and link this to our last meeting, to show us and to reflect how important the work is that we're doing, even if we don't recognize it, if we think it's just mere talk. So you mind if I share a screen, Dana?
Go for it.
It always amazes me. I'm always bowled over by, in some of the most unexpected circumstances, myth emerges. This notion of the rhizome starts to affect me. And you discover that what you're doing has resonance far more richer and deeper than one would think. And what do I mean by that? At our last presentation, I invited a colleague and a friend who is both a MacArthur scholar, right, the so-called Genius Award, and a Guggenheim winner. In short, this woman is hella smart, and she's in the sciences and the history of science. So I've never invited her to anything that we've done, but I heard her voice, so I invited her. Make a long story short, afterwards, she called me to tell me how it went. And she told me that it was absolutely marvelous. She loved the discussion. She said how it broadened her thinking. And I said, why is that? And she said, because I was swimming in a pool with people with whom I never swim with, right? And this whole notion of a pool and water and all of those of us who are in myth, we understand how important that is. So something told me, well, what does Jung have to say about pools? And it turns out in Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, where he talks a lot about the rhizome, he also does that in 2 analytical essays, Symbols and Transformation, but this is about the pool. And it turns out that he wrote this wonderful, before he died, in Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, he talked about the notion of a pool and how he was in Liverpool, a dirty, sooty city. And what did he get from this dirt and soot as he was walking through, wondering why anyone would want to live there? The various quarters of the city were arranged radically around the square. In the center was a round pool, and in the middle, a small island. My companions commented on the abominable weather and obviously did not see the tree. They spoke of another switch who was living in Liverpool and expressed surprise that they would have settled there. Jung finishes the dream by saying, I was carried away by the beauty of the flowering tree, the sunlight, and the pool. I know very well why he has settled here. So then he talks about, later on, he talks about the pool. In an Egyptian myth, in another myth, the pool is the source of life, right? Of course, we think about water, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the source of life. And so when he talked about liver pool, the liver is the seat of life, and the pool itself, as he writes here, is which makes one's lives. And what really just moved me was that, and we all understand how important the mandala was to Jung. He said after the dream, he gave up drawing or painting mandalas. The dream depicted the climax of the whole process of development. So here's this person who cares nothing about talking of myth, et cetera, and yet she makes reference to the pool in her description of how she was moved, not by me necessarily, but by all of the discussion, which is what stuck with me. So why is that important? And let me stop here for a second. And end with my fave, Toni Morrison, who recently passed away. She was moved by what we were doing in this space, by the talk we were engaging in, because she saw a group of people who were wrestling with their own assumptions. And it moved her very, very deeply. And Pilate, to those of you who I've spoken to before, of course, is this phrasmatic figure who challenges assumptions. How did she grow to be that way? Finally, Pilate began to take offense. Although she was hampered by huge ignorances, but not in any way unintelligent, when she realized what her situation in the world was and would probably always be, she threw away every assumption she had and learned and began at zero. And the first thing she did was to cut off her hair. And the women in the audience understand what a kind of metaphysical move this is for her to get down to her basic assumptions. And again, my friend loved the way that this pool of the unconscious was swirling around her assumptions, and she came out of it different. And then what did she do? What did Pilate do? Because Pilate, again, has a double meaning. Betrayal, vision, and Will, you pointed out something else last week that I forgot in terms of Pilate. Maybe you can text me out what you said, because it was wonderful.
Light?
What's that?
The pilot light?
Yeah, the pilot light. There you go. Thank you. So She then tackled the problem of trying to decide how she wanted to live and what was valuable to her. When am I happy? When am I sad? And what is the difference? What do I need to do, or what do I need to know to stay alive? And what is true in the world? So I'm very grateful to this group, because this group allows me to wrestle with, and I say how other people wrestle with what is true to them in the world. And I'm much better for having been in this group. And because of the holidays, and given that now the vaccine is started to be distributed, my little gift to all of you, and I'm not going to play the song I was thinking of, but instead I'll just share the lyrics with you. Just a second, please. I want to see if it's, I don't know why. I'll work it out. Can you see the song lyrics? Yes. So my experience with talking with her and in this group is what John Lennon referred to as the instant karma. And he says and he wrote, instant karma is going to get you. It's going to knock you right on the head. You better get yourself together. Pretty soon you're going to be dead. What in the world are you thinking of? Laughing in the face of love. What in the world are you trying to do? It's up to you. Yeah, you. Then he goes on to talk about saying yes to life. And he ends the song by, we will all shine on, right? It's an affirmative, like the moon and the stars and the suns. Well, we all shine on, like the moon and the stars and the sun. Will we all shine on and on and on and on? So I hope during these holidays, as you've done for me, that you find these little occasions to shine on, to be the best that you are. And as we struggle, and as Dana talked about earlier about transformation, as we all transform, that I hope you all find the third way, because in my interactions with you, I've gotten closer than I ever have before. So thank you very, very, very much. And again, I'm eternally grateful.
Oh, wonderful, Boris, wonderful. I am so glad you said yes when I told you about the Myth Salon and the Jung certification thing, and you drove all the way out here to Santa Monica from Riverside on a weeknight, no less.
Yeah.
Come on, that's certifiable, you know? So, speaking of being on the road, my good friend Catherine is on the road. Now she lives in Santa Fe and she's on her way down to Louisiana, Shreveport, I believe. And she's a trooper. I mean, this woman is just like, she's my sister. And just, you know, I, and Dara, we have been an item since day one, you know? So I love you. So come talk to me, please.
Hey, Dana. I think we all just need to acknowledge that Dana's shirt is spectacular tonight. It's a great shirt, honey. Oh. Well, yes, I'm on the road and I'm in a hotel and I set myself up here. And interesting, I didn't plan this, but here I am sitting between the light and the dark. And I think that is so apropos for where I've been this year. And I know for so many of us, hell of a year. And thankfully, in my family, we've had a couple of people who have had COVID. One person was in the hospital for a short time, but everybody's okay. And large family of my husband and I have 6 kids between us and 8 grandchildren, and now soon to be 3 great-grandchildren. And everybody has been well and no one's lost their jobs, and we are just so very grateful. For me, this year has been a very personal experience with the darkness that many are experiencing with the pandemic. To gather my thoughts, I've written it, and I would like to share this with you tonight. First of all, it is so great to see Dara, my sister, and Gard, and it's great to see Dennis. Will, it's so great to kind of say hello to you. I've been following the Salon all year, and it's just filled my heart and soul so much. It was just what I needed. So here we go. So I've been living in the underworld, hanging out with the Dark Mother since November of 2019. For that is when my husband and I came to the realization that our 30-year marriage was coming to an end. So that just threw me right down the rabbit hole into the waiting arms of the Dark Mother. And then along came the pandemic. So there in the underworld, I stayed there as I experienced the vitriol of some of my children as they blame me for the end of the marriage. Though if blame were to be placed, it was on us both. Stayed there through this pandemic, through the confusion, the isolation, the fear. Stayed there through the madness of US politics. Stayed there through the hatred that has seemed to permeate the very fiber of our country, and fear float in the air we breathe. Stayed there through 2 deaths in our family. Stayed there with the news that our 22-year-old grandson has a rare terminal cancer. Stayed there as friendships fizzled due to politics and life. Stayed there as I couldn't see my children or grandchildren. Stayed there and slowly began to heal, to accept love, embrace trust again. Stayed there as understanding emerged. Stayed there, learning to be alone, and at long last just be there in the underworld. Not scrambling to be in the light, as is my tendency and my comfort zone. You see, I'm always the happy one, always the light-filled one. Of course, I wasn't really alone, you see, for she was there, is there, ever present, ever nurturing in her own demanding way. She doesn't suffer fools kindly. I have known her personality or personally for decades. I no longer fear her. I know she is the ultimate mother for me. You see, she tells it like it is. She isn't necessarily unkind, though it certainly feels that way at times. I've learned her ways, and I've learned to always trust her. It's like this. She tells me, Catherine, come, rest a while. Then we'll do the hard work. Yes, I have been stripped naked, all adornment taken from me, and anyone who knows me knows I love my adornment. I've been hung on the hook, every ounce of life dripping from me, left for dead, broken heart, broken spirit, rotting flesh, never to see the light of day again, dried up, brittle. And then, as if tossed into a cup of hot water, like dried, brittle tea leaves, I steep, my true essence emerging, unfolding, getting stronger, darker, richer in depth and flavor, and oh, the fragrance. Coming to know I can survive. I will survive. I am surviving. And in that, I am growing. Roots running deep into the dark earth, re-emerging, breaking out of the chrysalis, yet again. She sends me back into the light, of course, for this dark mother believes in balance. She doesn't mind the light, she just doesn't want to be ignored and certainly not forgotten. In that light, and dare I say, because she is standing right there peering over my shoulder, healing takes place between my ex-husband and I, and the children, and the building of a new reality of relationship between us all. Yet, another new definition. In that dance of light and darkness is love and companionship. In that light and darkness, hope for our country and for the vaccine that may save lives, and for this new administration that may lead us back to some semblance of sanity. Most importantly, through the light as through the darkness, I have come home to myself. The dark mother knows the balance is needed. Like the evolution of a day, Helios traveling across the sky, and Selene taking the reins to travel into night. Twilight comes. I hear her call, come, rest a while, and then we'll do the hard work. There we go.
Wow. Catherine.
Dana.
Oh, unbelievable.
Well, that's been my year, and I'm grateful for it.
And I'm grateful to be part of it. We've had conversations as I've been driving places, and I pull over the car and we just talk, and yeah. So I want to bring in my good friend Selena. Was that a character named Selene in yours?
Yes, she's carries the moon.
Okay, well, this is Selena, and she is a moon child, as you can see. And another of my gracious friends. So, Selena, why don't you say a few things for us?
Yeah, I certainly am. First of all, Will and Dana, I want to thank you so very much. I am so honored to be part of this with all these incredible esteemed scholars. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. As a psychologist, I don't get to hang out with you guys, and I have grown tremendously because of it. So I'm deeply grateful as a psychologist and as a person. I am ecstatic. So thank you both very much. When Dana said to present something, I actually didn't know what to do. And I woke up on Sunday morning and I wrote something, and I've been massaging it for a couple of weeks. And it is exactly what I think. So I'm going to read it to you. It is going to be probably a little different than everyone else has done. But I love politics. I love being a person who watches what's going on in my clients, in my room, and it's kind of a compilation of everything that I live every day. So here we go. A year of transformation, 2020 vision. We as a culture are battling many polarities: good versus evil, fact versus fiction, science versus magic, and of course, Democratic versus Republican. We have one governing party standing by the conventions of the past, while the opposing one seems to be tripping out on a never-ending ayahuasca retreat, lured into distorted alternative realities, not being able to find their way home. These type of alternative realities embrace QAnon, Proud Boys, and other conspiracy groups that engage tens of millions of like-minded people, many smart and sophisticated, yet vehemently disconnected from the truth. How did this happen? Clearly, sensationalizing alternative realities through media outlets are lucrative. They hijack the truth. People who are desperately searching for meaning, purpose, and something to believe in align with them. Their lack of inner connection gets projected outwardly. When I observe the psychological nature of these individuals, I recognize three common themes, which I term the 3 Fs: fracture, fear, and faulty belief systems. This fracture did not begin with Trump or the Republican Party and will not end with him leaving office. It is a manifestation of our malignant culture, our cultural shadow. Who knew it was this deep? I believe that social media has unintentionally magnified this issue. The fractures that I'm referring to were created in childhood via traumas, molestations, divorce, through family patterns of dysfunction, and the like. The outward fracture is a manifestation of inner fracture. Yet, what I observe happening or birthing is a new addiction. The addiction to alternative realities. For this group, their fear makes truth untenable. It is false evidence appearing real. It is much easier to disconnect and restate falsities. Shadow dancing. Like some media outfits provide reinforcement, like echo chambers. They disconnect from reality. This makes the pathology of those that are disconnected from themselves feel normal. Healing this addiction is not going to come from politics. It's not going to come from the media, but from reconnection to divine and spiritual energies, psychological healing, personal devotional practices, healthy families, thriving communities, and a collaboratively aligned culture. It's going to be a long road to get us back on track. We need to become whole. We need to revision ourselves, not only as authentic based individuals, but also as constructive members of society. So that's what I think.
Wonderful. I just think that this time to reflect, to put everything in perspective, and to draw us into a sense of community, it's such a valuable opportunity that we face. And to have the friends and community that we have together is such a good place to start. I mean, we have a form of communication. We have people coming together. We have fabulous people coming in and saying, yes, they'd like to, be the thread that ties the knot for the next piece of community building that we do. And speaking of community building, in a place of the country that probably seriously needs it, my other good friend, Dennis Slattery, is down in the belly of the beast. And wow, I guess, Catherine, you're down there now, aren't you, in Texas? Yeah. So Dennis, why don't you unmute? Come on in here and talk to us for a little bit, and let's see what's going on down in your part of the world.
Well, I would have never been able to come to the Myth Salon until COVID. And you opened this world up to me, Dana and Will. And I want to extend my own gratitude because I look forward to these. And Dana, what you did with Will in laying out mythopoetic course that I so enjoyed preparing for and presenting and having people respond to was just an absolute joy. You know, it was 1933 that Olga Frober-Kapteyn went to Jung, a very wealthy Swiss woman, went to Jung and said, you know, you've got so many great ideas every year and you don't have a forum. I want to set up a forum in Ascona, Switzerland, and it'll be an annual, and it'll be a round table. And let's call it Eranos, because Eranos means banquet or feast. And the idea of a banquet or feast is that everybody brings a dish in terms of their ideas, and you nourish everyone else at Eranos. And so that went on for decades. I think the Myth Salon is the West Coast version of Eranos. It really is a banquet. And I look forward to hearing from people as much as I enjoy presenting some ideas as I hope food for thought. The other thing I want to say, and then I'm going to read something, and I'll say in a minute what it is. I just am so proud as a teacher to see so many students of mine, former students of mine, including folks like Selena, whose dissertation I had the great pleasure and honor to work on. And it just fills my heart to see how you folks have taken the work in myth and depth psychology and pushed it onto new levels. So that's just been an absolute treat. And it gives me joy to see your faces, which this pandemic has, in its crazy irony, made possible. Here's where I am, and I want to share this with you. And it cross-references so many of the folks that have already spoken, which is just, it excites me to present what I have. This idea of beliefs and their connection to myth has really taken hold of me in the last several months, and the election, it brought it to a head. So this is an area that I'm putting together for both talks, and I want to do some workshops on myths and beliefs. So let me share with you a couple of pages and then a small and I'm watching the clock over here, and a small handful of questions. And I know we won't have time for them, and I don't want to take up that time, but maybe for you to think about for another time. So here's the lead line of a story recently aired on CNN. Quote, debunking myths surrounding the coronavirus. Always makes me bristle when they get caught in that particular kind of thinking in which myths are still designated as lies. Now, for those who value and refer to myths to assist them in their lives, the headline reveals its own mythology, the fact that myths are untrue. Of course, the headline is completely unconscious of how that attitude and that belief towards myths grows directly out of a myth. And that is the myth of the Enlightenment, which gave us such treasures, and I'm not being facetious, as the encyclopedia from Diderot and the dictionary, the idea of amassing knowledge, definitions of words, and putting them between covers of books. Both of these collections of facts reveal a prevailing myth of enlightened reason that believes that measurement and quantification were the true corridors to truth. and that imagination, story, and myth were pesky distractions. Instead, they promoted what Donald Cowan, in his wonderful 1988 book, Unbinding Prometheus, Education for the Coming Age, labeled one of his chapters, The Myth of Fact. His claim is that facts too are myths. That is, a certain angle of perception on what we loosely call reality. Initially, factum, from the Latin facere, originated in the 15th century, and it originally meant to do something. In Italian, there is the popular phrase, which we used to love using when we lived in Italy, face vedere. Let's see what happens. Let's see what's around the corner. Not until the 1630s did it take on a more current use, meaning something that has actually occurred, meaning truth or reality. This is one of the cross references to several of you. I think the shift in the myth occurred early on, or was announced in a new format with a spokeswoman for the Trump administration in responding to a news journalist's question. The response was, well, we have alternate facts. Fact as myth, fact as belief. So let me just spend a couple of minutes approaching this at the time of Christmas, as Will already mentioned. A few questions for you lovers of myth as we wade together through a historical period in which what is true, valid, and verifiable is really up for grabs. In the volume Jung on Christianity, appropriate to cite on this week before Christmas, Jung makes this observation. And Dara, I'm thinking of you especially here, but all of you actually. A mythology is a storied or narrative way of believing in something. That's Jung. He goes on to suggest that a mythology is a perspective. It's a way of seeing and endowing experience with meaning along a certain energic, his adjective, pathway. End of quote. It seems to me, and you can comment on this, that beliefs form habits of thought, even habits of attitude, and habits of feeling. When any of these human responses are allowed to bake into our zeitgeist, they're immensely difficult to budge. Are we then to equate a myth with a belief? Or are they different in some way? Perhaps different formats, and here I want to use a favorite Campbell metaphor. Are they transport vehicles, resting perhaps on different metaphors that offer different energies to our souls? So a few questions to consider during this terrible dark winter of the pandemic. And I'm not going to read all of them. Let me just skip to a few of them. One, what are our individual and collective core beliefs? And are they being attacked as much from within as from foreign actors so that they're jeopardized? Does a belief take shape from within our personal and collective myths that we are continued to be shaped by? And pressing just a bit further, what about the assumptions? And one of you mentioned it, I tried to make a note of that. What about assumptions we live by at times without knowing until something intervenes to force us to question what we're assuming? Oh, for Boris, in reading Pilate's quote there, where she gave up, she decided to give up all of her assumptions. If a myth's original meaning is plot or story, then what is taking shape and shaping us as storied beings who may or may not know the basic motifs of our personal plot line? Two more. What's sclerosis or arthritis? sets in around our beliefs, attacking the cartilage of our credos so that we become less flexible, less resilient, and less able to pivot at all, much less in a particular direction. Are my deeply cherished beliefs, in fact, metaphors for internal realities that shape the contours of my perceptions and imaginings? And the last one I'll mention, are beliefs generally promoters of dualism simply by their very existence? I assume here that not all are going to believe what I believe. They're going to challenge mine with other or even counter beliefs. So thank you for letting me entertain some ideas about beliefs and myths. And this is where I am right now, seeing how they're related and then how they're different. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. You're a cherished part of the community, and when I invited you into the very first Transforming Consciousness sessions that even preceded the Myth Salons coming online, you were there and you've been with us diligently. You're a real trooper, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I love being part of this group. Yeah.
I'd like to welcome Kelly Carlin into this because, you know, she's got energy and intelligence and a history. And all of those work together to kind of conspire to make something really incredibly interesting, but it's like an electrified jellyfish that's out there in the water. You know, you get close to it and it's got some teeth. So thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you for having me here and putting out the invitation for this space to share ourselves. And just so beautiful to watch all of these unique sharings, and yet this rhizomic thread between all of us and all of it. And I'm going to read a little story that I wrote about 10 or 11 years ago, but it's about this time of year. And it was one of my first attempts of trying to bring in my understanding of what I'd been studying at Pacifica. I've been around Pacifica since 2001. We were our class started classes a week after 9/11. And so it was a very profound, incredibly profound time collectively to be in that space and to be traveling in the spaceship of Pacifica during that time, and really learned a lot about walking through darkness. So I wanted to share a little personal story that I've wrote. It was for originally a Christmas show that Taylor Negron had put on called Gothic California Christmas. And so that is kind of the overarching theme of it. Both Taylor and I grew up in Hollywood in the entertainment industry. The title of this story is Mele fucking Kalikimaka. Liminal, from the Latin limen, and defined in most dictionaries as a threshold or being in an intermediate state, phase, or condition. In other words, liminal is that strange and mostly uncomfortable place where the old ways are dying and the new ways have not yet been born. I have been spending a lot of time in this liminal space lately, and being here feels odd, frightening, and at times impossible. It is like having gone through the looking glass, where big is small, up is down, and Donald Trump is president. I've been in this upside downness quite a few other times in my life. In 1975, my whole family was in this liminal space. That autumn, Our harvest came in the shape of my mother finally deciding to go to rehab. After years of struggling with alcohol, cocaine, and Valium, she was down to 87 pounds, had not eaten in weeks, and really had no choice but to let go. It was either death of the ego or death of her body. Either way, she had to surrender. But that Christmas, my alive, sober, and doing pretty damn well mother insisted on getting us out of town so as not to replicate the Christmas before that went well enough on the actual day, but didn't really end well. Actually, you see, it kind of never really ended. It was a peculiar kind of thing. That year, I thought Christmas would never end. It wasn't until the week before Valentine's Day that my mother finally managed to take the tree and trimmings down, and thank God. Not only was it a major fire hazard, but I just didn't know what to say to my friends after mid-January had passed and the stockings were still hung with care. So off to Hawaii we went, more specifically the Kala Hilton on Oahu, the place where in the 1970s Hollywood went for their Christmas paradise. And it was paradise. There were dolphins swimming in the inner lake of the hotel. Poolside waitresses were willing to bring my mom and I virgin strawberry daiquiris all day long. And most importantly, no drug-induced insanity for miles around. I was very, very happy that I was finally getting my real Hawaiian vacation. Not like the one we'd had only a few years back in 1973 at the Dimpili Kai in Maui, where my parents brandished knives at each other over the fact that my dad had hidden his stash of coke and would not let my mom have any. In order to stop this insanity, I had written out a UN-style peace treaty to get them to stop fighting and arguing. It stated, I, George Carlin, Brenda Carlin, will not drink alcohol or snort cocaine for the remainder of this family vacation. I had them each sign on the dotted line. The treaty lasted all of 30 minutes when my dad went into the bathroom and shut the door, and my mother accused him of bogarting the blow. Of course, she reacted by going straight to the bar and ordering another bottle of Mateus Rosé for herself. There was no paradise for me that year. But luckily, now we are at the Kahala Hilton. And at the Kahala Hilton, we saw no cocaine, no alcohol, no knives being brandished. Instead, we got Stephen Eady and Sammy Davis Jr. Unbeknownst to us, Stephen Eady and Sammy were doing a New Year's Eve show in the ballroom. And well, because we were who we were and they were who they were, we got to sit with them at their table for the dinner and the show. A perfect 70s trying to be hip, but oh so schmaltzy Stephen Eady, with of course the highlight of the night, Sammy Davis Jr. singing The Candyman. After the show, we're all standing around schmoozing. I was standing with my dad and Sammy Davis Jr., and they were talking about all that had been going on in their lives. And my dad mentioned my mom's sobriety and both their battles with cocaine. And Sammy chimed in about his troubles with it and how he was trying to move on from its insanity. And I stood there nodding and relating to what they were saying. I was only 11 years old, had never done cocaine, but I also knew the all too harsh reality of its promise of paradise. Our sweet little Carlin family was immersed in the liminal that Christmas, emerging out of the dark ages of chemical-fueled chaos, not quite sure who we would become in the future, but knowing, at least now, we had one. That future ended 22 years later when my mom died of liver cancer. The long-term faraway price for all those years of Mateus Rosé and pharmaceutical cocaine. That year, 1997, it was I who would send what was left of the Carlins to Hawaii. I could not face Christmas in Los Angeles. My mother, you see, was Christmas. She was one of those who bought you too much of exactly what you wanted, and I would walk away from Christmas morning feeling abundant and well taken care of. Christmas without my mother seemed impossible. So my father rented a house on the Big Island of Hawaii so that we could get away to a place that could hold us in our darkness, in our winter, in our newest version of the liminal void. The Big Island can do just that, you know, for she holds the manifestation of life itself, the fiery and volcanic goddess, Pele. We took a helicopter ride to go and see her, Pele, and her volcano, Kilauea. We flew over the live volcano where there was a very large hole in the ground where we could see the most primal, elementary aspect of life on this planet, liquid rock. Its energy was like nothing I had ever encountered, raw, unflinching creation right before my eyes. I was witnessing the very act of manifestation itself. My body-mind felt like it had been entered by a force beyond anything I could ever imagine. I knew I had just seen the ultimate unknown, known otherness of life itself. At that very same moment, I looked over at my dad and saw that he was holding a small picture of my mom angled so that she could see Pele too. My heart burst open with a love so huge that I had no idea that it could feel something that big. And in that moment, I knew that human love, aching, raw, cut you in half, human love was part of the same creation inside that volcano. That both these forces were equal in their ability to build something up and to cut us in two. Love is the only thing that can be your bridge while in the liminal. 12 years ago, I found myself back in Hawaii, Maui. While I was there, I decided to visit the Napili Kai, that scene of the crime 35 years ago where I naively tried to contain the chaos of the Carlins. I wanted to see if there were any lingering effects of those dark days left on my soul. As I walked through the resort and on its beach, I was utterly amazed that all of the pain and the terror and the confusion were gone. Dropped off, released, and transformed through decades of seeking, searching, and healing. I don't normally believe in miracles, but I did in that moment. A door shut, an arrow was over, a wound itself was healed. Suddenly it was clear. The Carlins were whole again. I called my dad. He rarely picked up the phone, and I was ready to leave a message when he said, "Hey there, kiddo. Dad, guess where I just was? The Napili Kai." Whoa. And I shared with him how there was this space there and there was no regret or bitterness or nothing. It was done. I was done. We were done. There was a slight pause and quiet in his voice. That's great. That's really great. And then out of nowhere, I said to him, "And Dad, I want you to know that the parts of ourselves, our souls that we left there 35 years ago, I just reclaimed them for us. It really is done." There was a silence on the other end of the phone. Tears streamed down my face. All my dad could say was, "Yes." A deep calm was held between us for a few moments. Nothing really needing to be said because we both knew how long we had been fighting those long ago demons and how we both knew that finding peace with this past of ours had been a long, long journey. As I drove down that road looking out at the bluest ocean ever, I knew that I had just connected with my father in a way that I had always longed to connect with him, deeply from our hearts and not hiding one single square inch of ourselves from each other. I felt like all of me was present with him, and I was his equal, his teacher, his daughter, his soul companion. I wanted this feeling to last forever. This is the last conversation I ever had with my father. 3 days later, he was dead. And I stepped back into the liminal. Thank you.
No words, Kelly. When I read that, I was blown away, and I'm amazed that you can bring that to us. It's well captured. Well captured. It's beautifully rendered. So I would like to turn now to another good friend, Zaman Stanizai, who I met at UCLA even before I went to Pacifica. My wife and I were taking a Rumi class on a Saturday morning. I remember losing my coffee mug in the parking lot and driving back trying to find it. Well, I found Zaman, and he has been showing up whenever I've asked him to come talk to classes. I introduced him to Patrick out at Pacifica. They hired him. I mean, he's presented at the Myth Salon. He's a voice of reason and love in a time of struggling patriotism, and a representative for the Muslim world. He knows it well, although he is a Sufi, and I think the Sufis are part of the Muslim world, but he's a beautiful man, another of my gracious friends. So Zaman, why don't you tell us something? Share with us.
I feel like saying good morning, and perhaps it applies to some of you, because there's a lot of beauty in the morning. There's that bright sun that shines, and there's hope and looking at things in the future. Yeah, thank you, Dana, for being just a friend. I think that the word friend in itself is so beautiful. You don't really need to add any more adjectives to it. It's been quite an adventurous year. I was invited to go to India for a presentation, and I was just looking forward to it. And I was booking my flight, and as they, the list the airlines by the lowest price. So I saw there is one airline that charges like $600-700 less than the next one. And it's flying to China, and with a 24-hour stay there before going to India. So I said, well, something must be going on. Why is this flight $600 less? That's like more than half the price. So I called the person who was organizing the conference. I said, well, is this really true? He said, yes, but don't take it. I said, what's wrong? He says, well, their service is not good. Well, so I took the next one, double the price. But the point was that first airline was China Airline, and it was flying to a city in Southwest China. That was the center of the coronavirus thing. India was a wonderful visit and all that, except that I lost my passport and my cell phone and everything, but I recovered them. It was adventurous. But when I was scheduling the flight, I was supposed to get back here for March 7th when we have our community gathering. And I didn't want to miss it, but there's no way I could get there. So I took the next day and I said, well, what the heck, I'll miss this one. So while I was in India, the lockdown began, and I barely, got out of there. Then when I came to the United States, that gathering that I would have attended the night before and that I missed, someone with coronavirus had been attending, and half the guests got sick right there. Several of them went to the hospital, and unfortunately one of them passed away, and they were all talking about me like, and you are so smart. You must have known. How come you didn't show up? You are never absent. Well, I wasn't smart. I was in India. So these are kind of coincidental things that Corona and I have been trying to avoid. But now, I don't know, is there any such a word as 20/20 hindsight? Just maybe in about 2 weeks. But we are already there, and there's a whole lot of confluence on things that are happening these days. The book I translated is, rising up in the various charts, and the USA Today rated as the fourth right after Obama's memoirs. And I don't know if advertising is allowed. Here it is, Dancing in the Mosque. But they have been calling me for the last 2 weeks or so that, okay, we need you for the 17th, which is today, and it is my daughter's birthday. But they needed me today because today is the night of Rumi's reunion with the Divine Beloved. 747 years ago tonight, he passed to the higher realm. And this is my second meeting, and I'll be presenting in another one in a little bit. So I've been kind of busy, but wonderfully pleasant, especially being in a gathering of such wonderful friends that you are. I thought that maybe I could just share with you some reflections I wrote about Rumi and Rumi's poetry a couple of centuries back. No, sorry, I mean, that's a few decades probably. And this is simply describing what my thoughts are of Rumi's poetry. I titled it In the Cosmic World of a Lotus. The poetry of Mawlana Jalaluddin Muhammad Balkhi Rumi is a treatise on interactive divine love that nurtures spiritual stirrings in the depth of the human heart. Rumi employs the poetic vernacular to the optimum in his search to find a blueprint for the path to perfection. Through his supplications, contemplations, meditations, as well as his lyrical yearnings for the divine love, Rumi weaves the weft of mysticism from the woof of Quranic fiber, turning it into a woolen cloak that mantles the pious and the pure. Rumi's magnum opus, Masnavi Manavi, or the spiritual couplets, begins with a calling of the reed flute as a longing to rejoin its original source in eternity. In the suspense between reason and rhyme, Rumi clarifies the mythical to the ascetic and the aesthetic to the mystified. While words can never convey the full depth of thought, poetic parlance occasionally compensates for this inadequacy as it attempts to reveal the jealously guarded meaning from behind the veils of seclusion, where meaning is woven from the metaphors and allegories beyond the literal and the interpretive. Rumi's poetry defies cultural and linguistic stereotyping, despite attempts to reduce the universality of his thought to cultural confines. Rumi's work has been translated beyond place and time so that the beauty of thought does not surrender to vernacular dominance, nor is it sacrificed at the altar of poetic niceties. The mind journeys in the footsteps of the heart and realizes that the peace of mind is a mere temporality towards attaining the tranquility of the soul, with the ultimate aim of arriving at the state of being content and contented with the divine through subconscious connectedness. There, one hopes for a fleeting glimpse of a spiritual ambience that soothes the soul in the sublime. While clarity and ambiguity play their games through a discourse of linguistic simplicity and philosophical complexity, Rumi artfully simplifies challenging thoughts and beautifully infuses complex issues by inviting us into the garden of the Masnavi, from whence bridges span horizons between the violet mist of daybreak and the magenta dusk of nightfall. In the realm of the imaginal, one may glimpse the beauty of thought, flourishing as a lotus on the serene surface of a reflective pond, gazing into the indigo firmament for inspiration, while firmly grounded in the nurturing womb of the earth beneath. As the blue-violet hue of the lotus petals unfurls around the stamen in contemplation, one may be able to lift up layers of unfolding meanings from the lotus and life. Like Rumi, you too may spin in the cosmic world of the sacred lotus with the resonance of the voice within. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaman. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Silence. All right. Elizabeth, would you be receptive to coming in and playing with us?
Sure. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for arranging this banquet a couple of times a month. It really is. It's been very, very beautiful to hear from people.
Well, it's not exactly a bring your own fish event, as we well remember, but have a good time with us. And one day in the future, we will have a bring your own fish event again.
I was going to say there will be fish.
There
will be fish.
Okay. Thank you.
I followed up Dana's invitation by doing something entirely different. So this is an experiment. I probably should have consulted a book called Writing Poetry for Dummies, but this is my attempt at a poem. I've been thinking a lot about chaos and order and change and constancy this year. So I'm going to share screen if I can and offer a poem. Let's see. Can you see the screen? All right. This poem is, I'm just going to take that as a yes. This poem is called The Torch and the Tide. Limned against the night sky, the torch performs its sinuous dance, leaping, crackling column of fire that forever changes yet remains the same, as the philosopher taught long ago in a dusty Milesian town. How many nights did he watch the flame, devoted, in love with its aliveness? What else did he see long ago? How did he see? The column that is always itself for its endless transformation? He became a torchbearer, the old secret man, speaking in shards down the generations to people with shattered attention who cannot long listen, who have forgotten, if they ever knew, the slower arts. How did the old man know how to speak? Did he imagine us, the many in haste, careless, and the few who worry the shards in trembling fingers, feeling the wisdom that pierces the heart? Here's what I believe. On a warm night, enchanted by the smell of the sea, the Milesian walked barefooted to the shore, illumined by the rising moon that extended a silvery path from the far horizon to his sand-crusted toes. On the slow tide, he saw a familiar dark shape that rose and fell with a gentle surge as it curled, rolled, retreated, shy, then gathered itself to roll forward again, floating the dark shape steadily near. The Milesian stepped forward, eyes hungry for the offering, though the sea, ever serene, kept its ancient rhythm, until with a final rush of water, sea gave birth to the old one who approached, stately, on 4 feet. She stopped, patient, as the Milesian sank to the ground, and gently rested his palm on the cool, hard shell of his ageless friend, still damp from the sea. They spoke nothing, hearing all in the hiss and sigh of the curling tide. Who knows how long the two friends remained, serene in the still dark night, listening to the moving waters. Yet before they bade farewell, the Milesian knew that torch and tide sing the same song. Thank you. Writing poetry is a new chapter for me, so I'm still experimenting.
What a wealth of talent you are.
Dennis, I need to take a class with you.
I love the images, yes.
I need to take a tutorial with you.
I think we all need to learn from one another.
That's what we're doing here. That's the blessing of this place.
It really is. I'd like to move to Julie Daniels, who has not been a panelist before. So we're meeting really on this side of the screen, I think, for the first time. So Julie, thank you for offering, and you see what we're doing, and welcome. I look forward to hearing you.
Hi. Happy almost solstice, everybody. Thank you for this enriching salon. I'm honored to be a part of it. And here is a poem called Solstice. Full moon radiance, darkest night, illuminated. I put my ear to the earth and listen to its sighs of deepest slumber. Winter has begun. The shadows tutorial, a nighttime message of this still and soundless season. I want to dig my nails into the wet winter earth on this solstice eve and feel the shrubs and flowers. They huddle in the soil, gathering strength as they surrender to the dying of the year. Tomorrow, the sun will peep from behind its golden canopy, warming the chill out of winter's desolate day. I live among these opposites, retreating to the darkness in search of that longed for light, and whisper through the shadows, welcome, welcome, welcome.
What beautiful creativity we have tonight. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Teria, you want to come in here? And this is just beautiful, beautiful. All right.
Hello. I can't say thank you enough to everyone who's just delivered such. I've cried and I've laughed and I've been moved and I've been through a lot of different feelings and thoughts and emotions through this time, and I just really cherish the opportunity to be with you. And Catherine, I did some tears with you. Through your thing. Thank you so much for sharing the depth of all that, and in each of you, in your brilliant ways. Each of you, I could name each in responses, and Elizabeth, who knew your poetry comes next now. So I wanted to share tonight just some thoughts that I have been really nurturing in this last phase of what we've all been through in 2020 and so forth. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I work with people's dreams quite a bit. I had a retreat center for a long time where I was helping people work with the indigenous mind and getting back into the ways of knowing of the indigenous people. So that's been my focus for the last 20 years. Before that, I studied and taught the theories of David Bohm in dialogue, teaching the dialogue method, and taught it all around the world, and taught it in a classroom in Los Angeles for several years at the Art Institute of Los Angeles. After completing my doctorate and moving into my retreat center, that became a marginal part of what I was doing all the time. Now it's coming back, and I'm thinking the dialogue work is really the work for the future that we really need to embrace and understand. And David Bohm, the physicist, probably most of you know something about him, but he, at the end of his career, really articulated what he thought was the philosophical implications of his lifetime of research with the physics, and it became the dialogue process to understand how to get people into really functionally communicating with one another and to understand the obstacles to that. And so, with the sort of it seems intractable, the polarity that we're experiencing in the world today between left and right and up and down and fact and fiction and Republican and Democrat, and wherever you go in the world, there's a different way to name it, but it seems like there's something that really is coming to a head now that needs to be addressed. And it feels to me like the understanding of the methods that Bohm presented for understanding what happens in the brain and why we're not able to receive new thought, why we become addicted to our familiar thoughts. Dennis, I think you and Bohm were, doing a dance while you were, his spirit was very happy with all the things that you were presenting there about the assumptions, I think, and the ways that we resist thought. So I wish that I could say more, and I will say less tonight because of the length of this session that we've had together. But I just want to say that I feel like what we can do going forward now is like, we're not going to change until we do things. This is one of Bohm's major ideas, was that until we do things together differently, nothing's going to change. And I've been just really feeling that. It's like we're all doing our own work, and we're very sincere about the work that we're doing on ourselves. But until we can do it together and get together and sort of collectively individuate together, then it's not going to happen. It requires that we somehow are able to work with one another in new ways. And so I'll just mention some of the, the very basic principles that we worked with. I've spent hours and days and hours and days and weeks in the dialogue process, and it is powerful and profound, and if it's intentionally done, very transformative. The basic principles that I think we can bring to our own kitchen tables and our own conversations with our loved ones and our friends and with colleagues and so forth is basically to have deep and profound respect for one another. And that sometimes can be hard to do because we tend to be very dismissive. We're very addicted to our own ideas, our own assumptions, and we think somebody's kind of an idiot, and we think that is BS. And, you know, that kind of thinking is very sort of almost tacitly going on. And so to access that deep respect for the other that really represents a very other point of view is a challenge, and I think it takes effort and consciousness. So how do we access that deep respect for one another? And then when there's something there that, whether it's something that we appreciate and enjoy or something that we just hardly can bear to hear, to engage inquiry, to ask questions and more questions and questions of one another. And I'm thinking even just in the you know, in the conversations around my little kitchen table with my daughter and son-in-law and so forth, how sometimes it's just like, as Bohm said, thought tends to be like just bouncing off of the membranes of each other. We're just bouncing our own thoughts off of each other. And he noticed, this is how he developed dialogue, that some cells, when they tend to bounce off of one another, but some cells will open up their membranes and let the information flow between cells. And that is when the two cells then become something else. And he said that is how thought is transformed, is when we are able to open up the membrane of our thinking and allow for the information of someone else's very other thought to enter our own. And then Jung would call it the third. Then the third happens. You're not having this and that, but something else is born. So that often happens through a process of inquiry. And so I'm really working with this, trying to slow myself down in conversations and just ask more questions about something that is being said, so that we can unpack and open ourselves to one another. And then listening really deeply to one another. And I don't know about you, I was talking about it to a friend earlier today, and she said, I go to a family occasion and we all love each other, but I leave and I feel like no one has heard a word I said. I just feel invisible. And I think that a lot of us have those experiences in a lot of different environments. You know, it's everybody's polite and kind in many instances, but everybody's just doing their own thing and not deeply listening to one another. So it's a process now for learning how to listen not only to the words of the other, but listen to what's behind the words, and also listening to our own response and our own assumptions and our own baggage that we maybe bring to it, or to our own curiosity about it, and so forth. So listening is a very active process, not passive, but very active process. So to bring very active listening into the dialogue process, and then to find voice. Sometimes that can be the hardest thing, because we are trained from very early on not to say the things that we know somebody else is going to have a problem with or reject, or you know, that possibly is challenging, or that maybe is too precious and we don't want it to be exposed to some kind of rejection and so forth. So the courage to find voice for those things that we tend to hide away because of experience that we get, you know, starting early in life, with what will be welcome and what won't, and what, you know, how to voice. It takes practice and it takes courage. So I'm just going to offer that. I could have, you know, I would love to share more about dialogue and Bohm's ideas about it and the way that it affects the brain, our addictions to our own thoughts. There's so many things to know about this, but those 4 methods, I think if we take them into the next phase of trying to get along together as a culture, you know, which begins in our own, you know, our own little environments. The respect, the voicing, the listening, and what was the other one? The inquiry. So I'm just offering those 4 methods that he spoke of at great length for trying to have the experience of understanding the field of thought that we're in together, and opening ourselves to one another so that we can do things differently together. And so anyway, I wanted to share a little bit about this whole dialogue work is now coming back with full force that I had kind of marginalized for the last period of my life. And I feel like this is the next thing. And I really want to commit myself to the process.
Sounds like an approach to get another myth salon together.
Possibly. Yeah. You know, I do want to say that I would be here every time, except for I have a ongoing commitment on Thursday night. So I have to rearrange my life the times that I have come. And I long to be with you more. I just love seeing your community and how deeply you all clearly share with one another. And I'm sorry that I have this obligation on Thursday nights.
Got you once, we'll get you again. I'll get you sometime. So.
Yeah, well, I've been here a few times and I can always rearrange it occasionally, but I wouldn't miss a time, I think, if it weren't for that. So
Thank you.
Just want to say that. Yes, definitely.
And we are winding down. I have a couple more people. Let's go to Bruce. Bruce, why don't you tell us the story this is a story that you developed along the Wizard of Oz for your daughter, isn't that correct?
Sure, yeah, and thanks for that. And what Taria said is a perfect lead in because I did so much active listening. I wrote notes all over my outline tonight, and yeah, and I'm gonna need a lot of courage right now. So thank you, Dana. So I found the salon with the Chris Vogler 25th anniversary commemoration. And then I had a very nice Zoom with Dana after a couple of more salons. And what he said to me in a short amount of time provoked a lot of thought about my life and how I see my life and what I want to do and all those things. So everything I'm about to say goes along the theme of escapism. I told myself, Bruce, try to be as succinct as possible and make sense. So everything's going to deal with escapism here. Specifically magic, magic as it is in stories. So I had a very enlightening experience grappling with a children's story I had been working on for years and years. And actually it was only after I was reading children's stories to my daughter these past several years that I pulled out this thing from 12 years ago and looked at it and was like, okay, I got to make it really, really good now for my daughter, right? Thanks for that intro, Dana. So yeah, I'd written this children's book about a boy who desperately wants a dog, must have a dog, but he can't because he lives in a high-rise apartment building and the rules forbid it. And so segueing to that, I wanted to just share with that gap, because he can't have a dog, with some of the things that people have said tonight. As I mentioned, I wrote all over my notes with everybody else's quotes tonight. So something Voris said that was really cool, apropos, is how water is the source of life. And my story has a rainbow in it. And without rain, there's no rainbows. So thanks for that, Voris. Dara said things are horrible, sometimes, inescapable. And that kind of resonates with my boy not being able to get a dog. And, Sophie mentioned suffering versus strength and those poles. So I'm just going to go into reading. I'm kind of going to the end of what I was going to share by just reading the lyrics of a song, and hopefully people will recognize it. And it goes like this. somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. And the dreams that you dream of, dreams really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are, far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dream that you dare to. So, oh why can't I? So, to make a long story short, I had a wonderful experience doing some self-reflecting and introspection, and I think what magic and stories provide for all of us is it gives us an opportunity to ask, how are things without the magic? And so when you look at the Wizard of Oz, we have the lion who desperately seeks for courage, although he already has it, the Tin Man, a heart, a scarecrow, a brain, and they look to the wizard for the magic that will give them all those things, and they realize by the end they had them all along. And so by the time my rainbow in my story fades away, Dana, my boy's going to realize he didn't really need that dog after all. That's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Eventually, we're going to get to the Wizard of Oz in our group, who is AJ. But I want to go to Corinne right now, who is the producer of this film series that we have combined with called Pulling Focus. And I'll let Corinne just enliven the discussion a little bit, and she'll say things. And, we want to bring movies into our Myth Salon, movies and films, and maybe even TV documentaries and what have you. And go for it, Corinne.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? There's just a couple of things that I want to say. I have a book recommendation that's just stunning. I think it's on the bestseller list. It's called Wintering: The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times by Catherine May. I'm gonna jump right into my film series, but I'm gonna say that I'm an extreme extrovert that travels and goes places, and I'm constantly at premieres and parties and events, and I've been thrown into this solitude, and I am loving it. I'm embracing it. I'm shocked, because the whole point of this book, Wintering: The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Time, I have no skin in this game, I'm not getting kickbacks, is all about embracing the winter of our lives, embracing the difficult times, going into it, nourishing it, contemplating it. It has been my Bible during this time. So that's my one plug, but I will say that what's come out of this, I'm up in Oahu doing a lot of hikes and wintering and delving into deep time and nourishment. One of the things I'm really doing that's fabulous is visioning. And one of the things I'm visioning is a long-held dream I've had to do a film series with Pacifica. And gosh, I've tried. We started it one year with the amazing Will Linn, who has just been the best thing that's happened to me this year. I hope my husband isn't around. No, I'm just joking. He's just the best thing. He's such a great guy. He's such a great guy to collaborate with. But anyways, we have tried 3 or 4 times to get this film series off the ground. And this year, COVID got us. We finally had Pacifica ready to do this film series. And I said to Will the other day, we're doing it at the Salon. I said, we're the people we've been waiting for, I told him. And basically what this is, I'll give just a handful of lines because everyone's tired and it's late. We can pick this up next year. But what I envision this is, it's a film, it's not just a film series. It could be entertainment. It could be an author who wrote a book about a film. But I want it quarterly to be an event that is myth and film related. We showed the David Bohm film. We've actually already started it. Surprise, the Pulling Focus has started. We showed the David Bohm film, which was brilliant. We did the writer's journey with Chris Vogler. I thought that that night was life-changing for me. But I have access in my day-to-day life to directors and filmmakers and authors and speakers and panelists. So I could see us doing a film screening that has mythic overtones, and we do a Q&A with the director. That's a no-brainer. I do that for a living. But I also see, the other night I saw a woman who wrote a book called The Lady of the Black Lagoon about the woman who worked on the creature of the Black Lagoon. It was fascinating. She talked about the creature of the Black Lagoon from a mythic perspective. I could see doing a night with her. I could see a night doing with someone, with Maria Tatar on fairy tale and film. I could see screening a documentary that had strong mythic overtones. So what I see is not just film series. We're going to show a film and do a Q&A, show a film and do a Q&A. I see this rich, this rich mixture, cauldron of story and films and screenings and authors. And Dana, the brilliant, amazing, incredible Dana, has come up with the title Pulling Focus. Will Linn is my collaborator, and there's nobody, he's not even my co-pilot, he is the pilot. The guy is so freaking brilliant, and he's the rising young superstar in this field. So him and I are gonna champion this, and I can just count. My last thing I'll say is, you know how you belong to a book club, but you're not, I don't like the book, I'm not sure if I'm gonna go to book club, and you go and you love the discussion? That's what this is gonna be. Once a quarter, you're gonna show up, and you're going to see a movie, see a speaker, see a television series, see a documentary. I got some amazing stuff lined up, and I promise you're always going to get something out of it. Even if you don't like the film, you're going to come away with something. So that's my spiel. I can't believe I'm doing this when I'm the last one up and I'm so tired. Imagine if I had gone first. So anyways, last thing I want to say is please send me suggestions, recommendations. This is not the Will, Corinne, and Dana show. This is very collaborative, and it's going to be amazing. So thank you. Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Will.
I want to pass it back to Will in a moment. But as we're winding down here, I want to introduce everyone to my good friend and collaborator on the Tao Te Ching, Jonathan. Now, Jonathan may not feel like jumping into this fray, but Jonathan, if you would just unmute and just say a few words, I think people will have some sense of what I heard that Tuesday morning. And I had not a thought in my mind about getting involved in a project on the Tao Te Ching. I've read it, I've looked at it, I have it on my shelf. Never crossed my mind until I heard his voice. And I was moved. So, Jonathan, what did you do today?
First, I'm going to talk about Bruce. Bruce brought up dreaming. And in this time, to really dream, to really raise one's vibration and dream of what's not here, that's coming here, is so, so, so important. And just to breathe. I've been taking in everybody. Dana, starts with you. Everybody was taking you in. They're here because of you. And what a gift you are. And what a gift we all are. And it's that realization so that the focus is really on what's being created and not what's leaving. What's leaving is leaving. We have the potential and the ability to create what doesn't exist yet. That's the focus. And so I'm so grateful we're doing this project because we get to Hold space and create an atmosphere where people can open and receive and be supported. And that's what you guys are doing in this myth, in the way that you do it.
Now, I ask you,
Okay.
if you hear that voice,
come on.
I've been embarrassed. I heard it, and I called this man up after hearing him on a Tuesday morning with this harebrained idea, not knowing how to do it, where to do it, and I listened and I followed it. And now we have 29 of them online out of the 81. And in the next 2, 3, 4 months, there will be the full 81 that will come out. But we've deepened into this, and it's just an amazing collaboration. And it just grew out of hearing the voice that you just heard. I get choked up thinking about it, because it's a calling in the true sense of the word, you know? It was a spontaneous combustion of two people coming together around that. In a way, the whole Myth Salon has emerged out of that sense of trust that if we come together, magic happens. And it truly is, it's a succeeding of magical moments that enriches people's lives, and especially mine. I am so deeply grateful that that morning that I subjected myself to downtown Los Angeles, which I hate doing, to visit Will, that he said yes. I mean, he said yes to this idea of doing these myth salons. So let me pass it back to my brother, Will. And maybe you would say something about AJ, who makes the glue. He's the glue behind the scene. He's our Oz. He's our Oz man.
Well, first it's my turn to praise you, Dana. You know, I think if this thing is a plane, you know, I like to think about this one time I was with my whole family on a plane, all of us, and we're a big family, and we were a little bitty plane. There was one pilot. I was in the co-pilot seat, one propeller. The wind's going crazy, everything's going crazy, and it's like the most turbulence you've ever experienced. And you know, you're just thinking like, how am I going to get through this? And what it ended up being was the nose propeller didn't go anywhere. It was like the plane was all over the place, but the nose propeller was just, you know. And I think that you know, I think that what's so interesting is that the nose propeller has been taken over by the group itself. Like it is now it is like what's it called when a machine, when it's doesn't require new energy. Like, not to say that we aren't putting energy into it, but in some ways, like the momentum of what this is has created its own directionality, which is really rewarding to participate in. And what I wanted to say is that Dana is by far and away the engine of that nose propeller. I'm running around over here saying, hey, maybe we can put a radar on this thing. And Dana, I think we can make it a spaceship. But Dana is just so clearly driving and you know, motoring us forward with you know, Saturnian consistency. And I think that, you know, we all you know, have to thank our clock keeper for what this has been. And, you know, and with AJ, we should definitely, you know, AJ's the one running around when you don't see, making sure everything on the plane works all the time, and sharing the pilot's reports to you. Hey, by the way, we're going by the Grand Canyon. Make sure you check out this link. Hey, AJ, you know, and I know he just shared with you, I think, one of the Pulling Focus events. So thank you, AJ. You guys, any graphic you've seen, any newsletter formatting, any website updating, anything like that is all AJ. And AJ, without, you know, before we even had to talk about it, you know, started playing with new website ideas I know you guys are all seeing the website that we have has been around for a while. Well, can't even begin to tell you the surprises that AJ has enabled for 2021. Cannot wait. So thank you, Dana, and thank you, AJ. And with that, thank you to everyone. This has been an incredible year. I look forward to whatever the future is, but just being with the moment of what this year has been. I can't imagine, just kind of can't even imagine not doing the Myth Salon, or how lonely it'd be without this. So thank you, everyone, and special thanks to AJ and to Dana, whose praises we could continue to sing until the other side of the solstice.
Let's stop that right there. Let's go out on a moment of silence, please, and remember the context in which the Myth Salon exists, because we came online during the pandemic when there were just a few thousand people who had tragically come in contact with this dreaded virus. And before long, sad to say, it's going to reach 500,000 people. I mean, there's just no way to put a good shine on this one. It's just so a moment of silence, please. Thank you all for the kindness of your thoughts, the graciousness with which everyone shared and communicated. I'm just touched. I'm really, really touched and flattered, and thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And we will see you in 2021.
Good.
We've got a great lineup going. Kelly's doing sign language over there. Thank you all very much. This has been a meaningful evening. Sorry to run so long, but we had this idea of involving everyone, and
yeah,
good.
Good.
It was
Cheers.
beautiful, Dana.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you
Have a
all.
beautiful and safe holiday, everybody.
Yes, safe holiday for everybody.
Dana, thank you for receiving.
Many thanks to each of you.
Namaste.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Love you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for the dialogue.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Love.
You guys.
One love.
Good night, Dana.
How incredible you all are.
Okay, Jay.
Jonathan, you're going to send me to Nirvana with that
Oh,
voice.
come on, man.
No. Oh my God. Ooh. Jonathan, where do you live?
I'm in the Bay Area, Menlo Park.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They're lucky to have you.
All right. Here goes the
Day and
bye.
night.